Hey everyone, I'm Kristen, the Cross Stitching Runner, and welcome to my channel. I want to say a big hello and welcome to all new and returning viewers. And if by chance you've stumbled across this channel is all about cross stitch with a bit of life stuff thrown in. And I am super excited about sharing with you some progress that I've made on a variety of projects since we've last caught up. Since we last caught up, I've been able to start doing a bit of my belated edition of the AFL Stitching Challenge, and very much belated because as of last night, Wednesday, the 27th of August, the AFL had its last game of the regular season, and we're going to have roughly a week break where the teams get to rest, celebrate, commiserate, anything in between, and then commencing, I think, roughly the 4th of September is when the finals are going to start. But I'll get into that a little bit later. What it means, though, for my stitching is that I have kept a tally, and I'll include a little bit of a picture screenshot of a spreadsheet that I've been using where I've kept track of which teams have won their games in each round. And there are 24 rounds that make up the fixture, and there are 18 teams. So, for example, one of the teams is the Sydney Swans, which I and my boyfriend support. And let's say, for example, in round one, they may have won their game and their final score might have been 77 points. And as a result of that final score, I'm choosing to use the score of 77 to equate to 77 stitches. And I've chosen a picture called the Pelicans, which is a Country Threads picture, or chart rather, in association with the swans, because their name is swans. Swan is a bird, therefore I'm going to work on pelicans because I'd already started pelicans perhaps last year, and I had considered starting a picture that actually had swans in it, or I could have started or worked on an existing picture that had red and white in it because of their team colours. So with that line of thinking, I'm applying that to all of the other 17 teams within the AFL fixture, and we'll wait and see how things go. But without further ado, the first project that I have to share with you is called Black and White Rolled Up Daisy, and it's charted by Hot Cross Stitching. And this is roughly what it will look like when it's finished. I've been working on this project for quite a few years now, and the picture is based upon a photograph that I took and converted to cross stitch. And this is where I'm up to so far. I am stitching this on 18 count Ada and using DMC threads. This particular project I have assigned to a couple of teams. The first team I have assigned to is the Collingwood Magpies. Here in Australia, magpies are black and white birds, and we can feel almost like in some areas of Australia that the magpies are like, as far as the actual bird is concerned, they're gearing up for swooping season because we're coming into spring soon, and magpies are notorious for swooping because they are protecting their nest. Anyway, the other team in the AFL fixture that I have this piece assigned to is Adelaide Crows. And again, crows, they are here in Australia a blackbird. And also, because I'm stitching this on black fabric, I've also called it Black and White Rolled Up Daisy. Yeah, that's my logic of linking the project to those two teams. And what you'll hopefully have noticed in the spreadsheet image that has been on the screen is that I've started highlighting the rows as my way of marking off to say that I've put those stitches in. So since we last caught up, I have put at least 350 stitches into this piece. I've been focusing mostly on this area here just to try and fill it in and bring things down. I've been mostly enjoying this piece so far, and quite recently, as of last night, yesterday, I found that I've made a mistake in the actual charting process where I have 3 squares that have not been assigned a symbol of anything, and this is meant to be a full coverage piece. So at least as far as the stitching process is concerned, I'm going to need to make something up and figure out what color I can put into there, which will be easy enough. That's okay. But it also means that later on I'm going to need to go back to the chart and actually fix it up and go from there. It'll be okay. It's all good. One thing that I do want to note is that one thing, especially last night, that I found difficult with stitching, and I'm not sure how well this will show up, but I've got very dry skin on my fingers and hands at the moment, and that was part of a cleaning bit that I did probably a couple of days ago. I had cleaned the shower screens in one of the bathrooms that we have here, and I had used these special cleaning wipes. I think it's called the brand is BAM, and I made the mistake of not wearing any gloves with those particular cleaning wipes, and they've very much dried my hands out, and it's actually hindering my stitching process because the dryness of my fingers, even after I've put some moisturizer on and my hands have soaked them up, the dry skin is actually catching on the thread in the needle, and it's making life challenging, to say the least. So I'm very much looking forward to the dry skin on my fingers coming off, and a little bit of oversharing, but it could be worse. Anyway, the next piece that I have to share with you is a piece called Under the Sea, and here's the cover image for it. Under the Sea is not associated with any specific team at this point in time. I'm actually stitching Under the Sea for next year's Canberra Royal Show, and its theme is Under the Sea. And this is where I'm up to. I am enjoying this piece, and what I'm enjoying even more with it is doing a bit of the back stitch as time progresses, because I'm hoping that by doing a bit of the back stitch as I go, it's going to reduce how much I need to do when I've finished a lot of the stitching. One of the things, especially yesterday when I was working on Under the Sea, doing the back stitch, I have found that the way it's been charted on this piece has been so much easier compared to other pieces that I've stitched in years gone by. I have found it so much easier to follow. I don't know. I can't probably explain why, how, or anything. That said, I can say that it's Durene Jones who had designed this piece exclusively for Lakeside Needlecraft, and I'm stitching this on 28 count opalescent fabric called Tropical Ocean that has been hand dyed by Paddock Lane Designs. This piece I'm absolutely loving. Also, I do want to note that earlier when I'd been stitching Under the Sea, also noting I need to probably hold this up just a little bit better. I may not have gotten this into view very well. One thing I do want to note and acknowledge is that initially when I was started stitching this piece, I hadn't fully realised that there was already metallic thread in this piece for some of the sea creatures like the octopus and jellyfish. And what I had initially thought that I'd do is use some metallic thread for, let's see if I can get this around the right way, with some of the sea plants that we see here just near the turtle. I initially had the grand idea of thinking that I would use some metallic thread for that sea plant and that I'd use beads for it. After using some metallic thread in this chart, it's reminding me that it was a great idea. I think I'll go with what's charted. I still have plans on using some beads though for the little air bubbles that are scattered throughout the piece. So the beading I'll do at the end of all the stitching. Now, the next piece that I have to share with you, oh, let's get this out of the way, is a piece called Zebras. Now, this is where I feel happy and excited as well. So this is Zebras and it's by Design Works. It is a kit that I have had in my collection for a while and I've been slowly working on. With Zebras, I've had it assigned to a team called the Gold Coast Suns. And Gold Coast Suns played last night because there had been some wet weather or something a lot earlier on at the start of the fixture, start of the AFL season rather, and it had to get delayed. Anyway, the very exciting thing with the Gold Coast Suns is that they beat the team called Essendon Bombers, and it means that for the first time in the history of Gold Coast Suns, I don't know how long they've been in the competition for. However, they have made it to the top 8 for the first time in the history of the team and of its existence within the competition. It is a super exciting thing because for starters, it's the first time they've been in the top 8 and they're also a non-Melbourne team, which again is a huge thing because, as a side note, the AFL had originated down in Victoria, and Victoria still has the VFL, which is, I guess, their state competition compared with the national competition of the AFL. So, with all of that said, I found that a lot of the commentators who are somewhat traditional with their line of thinking and are ex-players of the competition as well will barrack for Melbourne-based teams, and to have a non-Melbourne team in the top 8 is an exciting thing, and for this team to make it to the top 8 is a huge thing as well. Also acknowledging that they traditionally have finished towards the bottom of the ladder. So the best they've ever done is maybe finish 12th on the ladder out of a possible 18 teams. So that's why it's all exciting and all the rest. And it was a really strong, significant win too. So this is why it's an exciting thing. So this is where I'm at. I am stitching this in all of the called for colours and fabric and such. This is 14 count white Aida, and I'm really happy with how this piece is coming along. I have focused mostly on the orange around here, and it means that I have completed the stitching for round 1. I am partway through stitching for round 2 and 3. But it's all good. It's all good. Okay, so The next piece that I have to share with you is a piece of my own doing. It's a personal piece called Pisces, and when we get this, all good. Okay. Okay, so this is a mock-up of what it will look like when it's done. And the words are a little bit hard to see, especially on the screen, but it's saying Pisces. Not everyone gets the same version of me. One will tell you I'm a beautiful soul. Another will tell you I'm a cold-hearted arsehole. Believe both, I act accordingly. And this particular piece is like a mashup of two things. So the mashup is, first off, the picture is one picture that I came across on the internet that I really love the look of, and the quote is another thing that has been placed on top of the picture. And I have chosen to have the colors as they are with regards to the text in comparison with the rest of the picture, because my aim is to still have the words there, but to have them blending in a bit with the rest of the picture, because I just love the colours, the rainbow style colours of the two fish. And the significance is that my star sign is a Pisces, and I have and always debated about this particular quote, yet I feel that it is fitting. And when I get to the life update component, I feel that this fits even more. So, with all of that said, this is where I'm up to. I've been focusing mostly where we start to see the words not Eve and a little bit of the green down around here. So it doesn't look like much. There's been roughly 140 odd stitches put into the piece since we last caught up. And as time goes on, more will be put in. I am stitching this 2/2 on 28 count even weave. I am making the creative decision to actually cut off a part of the chart where I should have started stitching this 1/1 so that all of the chart would fit onto the fabric. I think at the time when I started stitching it, I might have been working on other projects where I was stitching 2/2 and I was just straight into that mode of stitching. It is what it is. It's okay. But what I do want to acknowledge is that Pisces, I have it associated with a team called Port Adelaide, and Port won a couple of games in the first few rounds of the AFL season. Okay, so the next piece that I have to share with you is called A Stitch in Time. And A Stitch in Time is a Heaven and Earth design based on it's Heaven and Earth Designs, and it's a mini Stitch in Time based on artwork by Amy Stewart. Now, as soon as people see this, you'll know there's so many people working on this piece. So that's roughly what it will look like when it's done. And this is where I'm up to so far. This particular piece is associated with a team called the GWS Giants. They are a New South Wales based team. I have just been doing confetti with this, and I've put maybe 200 or so stitches into this at the most since I've been doing the AFL Stitching Challenge for this year. The good thing is I'll be able to get a lot more stitching put into this as time goes on, because the Giants did really well this season. They've made it to the top 8. They do have a bit of a challenge ahead of them. I will be surprised if they make it to the grand final. I have a feeling that there'll be some other teams that will just be a bit stronger. Anyway, that's by the by. Now, the next piece that I have to share with you is one that I'm actually getting excited about again, because recently I made an executive decision about how I was going to properly utilize the threads. So the project is the Luca S, the Luca S trio of dogs. This one I'm very slowly working through stitching for my boyfriend. It was one that he had picked out a few years ago. Initially, I made some grumbles about it because it was just so many browns, and I felt that it was a bit boring at the time, but that's just me. So this is where I'm up to so far. I've been focusing mostly around here. This particular piece already came pre-gridded, and this was also before I learnt what gridded fabric was all about and how to effectively use it. It is very much going to need a really good wash when it's done. Now, if you're watching this and you've not stitched a Luca S kit, the kit typically comes, now noting I have cut things down a bit, so this is just a sample of what the Luca S threads come with. So it'll look like this. All the threads will be sort of wound around cards like this. I found it to be super challenging as I progressed with stitching trio of dogs, to the point where I almost didn't want to keep working on it because of how the kit was set up. So what I decided to do a few years ago was I wanted to start cutting it down a bit. So I wanted to try, and I guess again this is another example, I wanted to try and cut things down a bit so it would almost be like a mini bobbins instead. But I still found it to be a bit of a pain in the neck, because I found that if I'd finished stitching all the symbols for that particular color, or that color for that particular symbol, I then needed to figure out how to put the thread back onto that bit of the bobbin, and it's not designed very well in that sense, I found. So what I ended up doing in the last few days is I actually bobbinated the threads instead. So what I did, I can get this to focus a bit better. Okay, hopefully it'll be a bit blurry. What I've done is, these are sort of cardboard bobbins, and on one part of the corner I wrote the word anchor just to remind myself that it's an anchor thread, and I then put the symbol on it as well. And I feel so much happier for doing this. There's still the challenge where I need to go through the project bag to actually find the bobbin that has the symbol for the color that I need. However, it makes me happier to work on the piece, because I know that when I have finished using a bit of the thread, I can easily put it back onto the bobbin. So I'm happier. It's all good. However, I have stitched myself up a little bit. Now, with this particular one where it's got the circle and I've then got the purple pen circled around it, I've lost that color thread and I have no idea what color it's actually meant to be. So what I'm going to do is stitch as much of the project as I practically can with all of the other threads, and I may just end up fudging it and picking a color that I think it should be based on the cover page. And if that gets to the stage of feeling like too hard basket, I'll potentially reach out to the Luca S team and say, hey, this is the kit that I'm working on, and do you have any idea of what color it's actually meant to be? Because the annoying component of the Luca S kit is that it doesn't tell me what anchor color number it should be, and I do have a bit of an anchor stash that I can go with. So if all else fails, I'll reach out to Luca S, see how we go. However, I'm fairly confident in my ability to change out colours and pick what could be right. And it may end up being, say, I could use DMC Ecru instead. I'm guessing a little bit, we'll wait and see as time progresses. Okay, so we're getting to a particular stage where I need to take a break. We'll be back right soon. Okay, before I move on to the next project, I just want to acknowledge that the trio of dogs is associated with the Western Bulldogs, and I don't remember how many days or anything that I've spent on the piece. It is just associated with the Western Bulldogs. Okay, so the next piece that I have to share with you is called Fight Like a Girl, and it is designed by a person with a surname Zhnedkova. I remember pronouncing that quite a lot. Anyway, as I'm finding the cover page for Fight Like a Girl, it is a piece that I had purchased a few years ago online via an Etsy store, and Tanya Amity is the designer. This is Elena Zhnedkova. This is roughly what it would look like when it's done. And I have a couple of teams at least associated with Fight Like a Girl. The first team is the Melbourne Demons because their colours are navy blue and red. And the next team that I have associated with Fight Like a Girl is called the Brisbane Lions because we have a lion in this piece. This is where I'm up to so far. I am stitching this on 18 count navy blue Ada. I'm enjoying the progress of this piece. I did have to spend a little bit more time than I would have liked, trying to fudge a bit where I went a bit wrong. Thankfully, it was the background that needed the fixing up compared with anywhere else, so it's not going to have too much of an impact of what's going on here. My eventual aim with this piece is to finish it and give it to my niece. Hopefully by the time I have this finished, she'll be a little bit older and will get to appreciate the different books that are in this particular bookshelf style piece. So the cool thing with Fight Like a Girl is that it is going to get a reasonable amount of attention because even though Melbourne Demons had a very poor season this year to the point where they sacked their coach, the Brisbane Lions did pretty well, which I think surprised quite a lot of commentators because Brisbane Lions won the grand final last year. They beat the Swans by a huge thumping. And so what recent history has shown is that for teams who have typically won the grand final don't necessarily do as well the following season because it's almost like they get a case of the yips or whatever the other lingo might be. Anyway, Lions actually doing pretty good. And the fact that they're also a non-Melbourne team that won the grand final was pretty awesome. That was pretty cool. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. The aim, though, is to still get quite a bit done on Fight Like a Girl. Also, I am stitching it with all of the cord 4 colours. They're all DMC stitching 2/1. So that has been pretty cool. So I figured that if I can keep myself a little bit organised with all of this, it'll make life a little bit easier. Now, the next piece that I have to share with you is a restart, because in my last episode, I started to acknowledge that I wasn't happy with the way some of my stitching was turning out on a piece called Autumn Leaves, which is a hot cross stitching design. And I'm really happy with how this is going so far. So I'm just looking for the cover page to share with you, because this is going to look really cool when it's finished, if I say so myself. So this is roughly what it will look like when it's done, and I'm actually stitching this time around on black Ada, and it's going to be good. This is just the small restart. This is on 18 count black Ada, and even though the dark colours are going to be a little bit tough to stitch on at times, it is going to be worth it. So I don't remember how many stitches I've put in. It's been maybe 150 odd stitches, give or take, maybe 200 at the most. It was quite sad, sort of undoing a lot of the stitching recording in the app of Pattern Keeper. Worth it in the end. It's going to be well worth it. It does have a bit of confetti in it, but I think that's what's needed for a piece like that, to be able to show the varying tones and colour changes of autumn leaves. Now, noting that autumn leaves I have associated with a team called the Hawthorn Hawks, and I feel excited about Hawthorn this year because they've made it to the top 8, and they are my pop's team. Now, my pop, he passed away what feels like a couple of years ago now. It was only semi recently, and Hawthorn have been in the premiership for a long time. Uh, but anyway, the fact that that's looking really good now, I'm very happy with. So, what else is going on here? Okay, no problems. So there was that restart. Restitching, it's all good. We are pretty well up to date with all of the stitching now so far, which means that we get to move on to plans a bit. So when this particular episode comes out, it'll be in theory, it'll be the 31st of August, which will be Sunday, which means that on Monday we get to start a brand new month, which means that it could be one of a few things. Last year I did do Spooky September, and I overcomplicated that one for myself, and I still got to do some spooky stitching, which was good. Where my headspace is at, though, is I have this itch to want to start everything and anything, and that could be okay. I am also then thinking ahead about next year's stitching and what that's going to look like. And depending on where your headspace is, in the Chinese astrology, next year is the year of the horse, and I have quite a lot of horsey charts, horsey kits, and all the rest. And there's also a piece called Midnight Glow that I've been talking about finishing off for many years now. I've just not pulled the finger out and done it. So there is that line of thinking of planning a bit further ahead. However, I have quite a lot of cat charts, and whether I do Year of the Cat as well, Year of Cats and Dogs. But then I know that I'm going to end up wanting to touch on other pieces as well. So restricting myself to something a bit narrow. Year of the Animals could work out a little bit better, because it means that I can work on the cats, the dogs, the horses, and I can finish off Under the Sea. I can be working on other ones as well that are animal related. However, reining it back in, September is also for some people Sampler September, and I have been resisting getting on the bandwagon for as long as I've been doing cross stitch. I am yet to find a sampler that really grabs my attention, and I know that I've mentioned this off and on throughout my floss tubing time. I do have a chart in a tub that, of course, is at the bottom of the pile that does have a sampler feel to it. It is a Beatrix Potter themed one. So we're talking Peter Rabbit, we're talking Jemima and Puddle Duck kind of feel, kind of vibes. Maybe. I don't know. It could. I don't want to force myself into something that I'm not feeling. However, the closest, and this is by far a long stretch, to try and find some kind of sampler thing that I feel, especially because in my brain I've got the traditional line of thinking of what a sampler is, and that's why you see me reacting like I am with my thought process. I do have a piece that I started called A Patient Stitcher. It is a beautiful piece, so that could almost be my equivalent of a sampler, even though it doesn't have the house, it doesn't have trees, it doesn't have people, it doesn't have flowers or anything like that that a traditional sampler has. I could do a Quaker. There are some other more modern style of samplers, and there's actually a spooky sampler in Halloween themed magazine that I have. It's not quite speaking to me yet, not in a positive way anyway, of please stitch me. I am contemplating and working on designing or creating my own version of a sampler that could be fun to stitch. Again, I'm still playing around with ideas of what that looks like, how that feels, and trying not to go too overboard with the detail on it. So we've still got a bit of time to go. I am leaning towards the spooky stitching though, because I enjoy that, I do have quite a few pieces that fit within that Halloween spooky thing. Also noting that it'll flow very well into Spooktober as well. I mean, there are some people out there in our Flosstube world who do spooky stitching 24/7 to an extent, or do all year round spooky stitching. So that could very much work. We'll have to wait and see. There are so many ones that I wanna work on. Like I've even bought recently some HAED charts that I have been itching to start for several months now. So this could be my perfect excuse to actually delve into them and make a fun start with them. So I feel like I've nearly talked myself into that component. However, I am reserving the right for changing my mind on a regular basis for this one. So we'll wait and see how that one goes. Okay, so we've had plans. We've gone through a lot of the stitching. I am still very much needing to do quite a lot more stitching on other pieces that fit within the AFL stitching challenge. Hopefully I won't feel too worn out for when the time comes next year, because the AFL season will start March at some stage, roughly March. Anyway, it'll all be good. Now, I do have a little bit of a life update, which is going to make so much sense for why this episode is sounding and feeling like it is. and it'll even make so much more sense for a lot of all of my other Flosstube episodes. So with life update, I for the last few months have been going through an assessment to determine if I have autism or ADHD or a combination of the two. And within the last week at the most, I received results back for the testing, and I have been confirmed diagnosed with a mild variation or mild version. I am mildly I might let's get these words right. I have mild ADHD, which means that I am high functioning, and I mildly experience the symptoms, not symptoms. Um, I mildly experience ADHD compared with other people who experience ADHD at a more significant level where it impacts their life a lot more than what or how it impacts my life. So for me, for ADHD, I'm still learning a bit about what it means for me, because I initially going into this assessment process was very much in the headspace of thinking that I had autism, and I was expecting that to show up a lot more in the assessment and the results and all the rest. And with the discussion that I had with the assessor who's writing up the report and such, she was saying that I didn't quite meet any of the markers that would determine that I have autism. Yet I feel like I at least empathize with people who are on the spectrum for autism. When I first received the results and was talking about this a bit with the assessor, it felt like a relief to an extent to know that I am neurodivergent to an extent, because feels it feels like it reassures me that it's not just my personality being a bit weird, that my brain pattern of thinking and doing, that there's a neurological reason for it. It's not just me being weird, and that I just need to change my thinking and my way of doing things. So how I experience ADHD is very much internalized, in the sense that it's more about my thought patterns and how I internalize the thoughts, where I'll be dwelling on a conversation that I may have had with a passing stranger yesterday, and I might still be thinking about it today and maybe a few days later. Yet for someone who is not on the spectrum, who is just the average Joe, your regular person, you wouldn't be giving any more thought to a 10-minute conversation that happened 2 days ago. You'd be like, yep, okay, that happened. Let's move on now. So the other thing is, as part of the process, was that I have a lot of social anxiety through historical experiences. My train of thought, as we've all experienced through these Flosstube episodes, I think before I speak, which means that I have these pauses in my speech where I then think about what I've just said and go, crap, I shouldn't have said that. Or I rephrase what I'm saying partway through, or I don't fully finish a sentence because my train of thought is trying to figure out the next few words of trying to be politically correct or whatever the wording needs to be for that. I will finish 90% of a project or 90% of a task and then go, okay, yep, I'm done. This next bit of a task, is a separate task. An example of that would be filling up the water jug. So here in Wollongong, my partner and I, we really don't like the taste of the water that comes out of the tap. And for the whole time that we've been living here, we've been buying water from the supermarket, and we have this 10 litre jug that has the special water spout thing that you can then turn off and on, so it can fill up a glass or whatever. So what the practice is if I'm filling up this 10 litre water jug, I'll fill up the initial original water jug will be empty. I'll set it aside going, yep, okay, my main aim was just to fill up this blue water jug. And the fact of putting the empty jug in the recycle, to me, in my headspace, is a separate job, because I have to get my keys to then get back into the unit, and all the tasks that are associated with putting the empty jug into the recycle, to me, is a separate task to filling up the water jug. Those are just some minor examples of the neurospicy, so to speak, of doing things. What I feel relieved in knowing is that the assessor had also identified through some school reports that I was able to provide her from primary school through to year 12, especially when I started getting to high school and college, that the teachers were starting to talk about in the school reports that even though I allowed myself enough time for muchness to get my school assignments done, I wasn't going back and reading through them and making sure that I completed the sentences or that it made sense to an extent, because my headspace was like, okay, I've written the essay. Yeah, sure, I've checked to make sure that the words are spelled correct. There's no mistakes in that sense. And okay, cool, the assignment's done. Let's move on to the next task. I've also found, especially since high school through to even today, I'm excited about starting something new, whether it be a new cross-stitch project or if it was a school project on a topic that I was excited about. I would start on that project before I knew all of the information I needed to actually complete the task, and then find that I needed to go back and redo some of that work. Or still thinking about school, I would do this huge brain dump of my assignments and find that I needed to cull quite a bit in that assignment to actually meet the parameters of the assignment. And it actually caused quite a few interesting discussions with my boyfriend and I, because I'd sometimes get him to read through it for me just to be sure that it made sense, and ask his help to figure out what components I needed to cut out, because in my headspace it was all important, and that to an extent it reduced how much, or it reduces how many question asking would happen. So even as I'm talking about all of this now, my ADHD is flaring a bit. Now, there's also things like stimming and all the rest that was asked a bit about during the process, and especially from the autism perspective, where for someone who is significantly impacted by autism, we may be thinking about people who are always up, walking around, moving around. And I guess that fits a little bit for some people who experience ADHD as well. But it's also the arm flapping, for example, or it's the hitting, the tapping, or other things that can happen, such as like humming or singing. Internally, I still experience that a little bit, where I will get a loop of a song stuck in my head. So it might just be a particular couple of words or couple of sentences from a song, or a couple of phrases from a song, or it might be a part of a tune stuck in my head. Or I might verbalize it a little bit, where there's a couple of TV ads on at the moment. There's a car ad, for example, for a brand called Skoda. That's how we pronounce it in Australia, yet uh, the ad pronounces it as Skoda. And for me, that is just a really fun word to say. And I feel a little bit embarrassed even just saying that out loud, even though I'll comfortably do that while I'm sitting on the couch with my boyfriend, partly because he's not paying attention to the ads too much anyway, or not paying too much attention to what I'm doing. And then there's another car ad on TV. It's another European car brand called Citroen. That's how I've always pronounced it in Australia. Yet in the car ad, they've pronounced it as Citroën. At least that's the best way I could pronounce it in. Anyway, there's probably a slightly better way of pronouncing it. Yet I hadn't realised that that could be the proper way of saying it. So again, I'll end up repeating that word just after I've heard it on the ad on the TV. So it's those sorts of things, and I think from what I've seen on the internet, Ecolia, I think that might be a very similar wording to what I'm trying to pronounce here, of what it means for those sorts of things that I've just described, of having the vocalized or internal words getting stuck in your head, or the finishing off of a tune. So if someone starts off a particular beat, it's almost a human brain thing to want to finish off that particular phrasing of the music or a tune or something. It's those sort of quirks that I know for a little while there, myself included, was just assumed that it was part of personality rather than it being an actual neuro neurodivergent thing, and also acknowledging that it's genetic is not something that I've learned along the way. If anything else, I've tried to learn to hide a lot of these quirks and weirdnesses of my being, because for muchness I felt rejected. I've wanted to fit in, and I think that's just a human nature thing as well, that we all want to fit in some way. We want to be accepted by our peers, and it, for me at least, is it's felt like it's been a very hard thing to try and find my tribe, to try and find a group of people that I feel comfortable with, that I can fully relax around. And I don't know if it's the same for other people, especially the people with regular ways of thinking, that you want to try and find people. Well, I guess everyone wants to have shared experiences, or to fit within a group of people, but how important that is for others, I don't know. I'm keeping an eye on time, but acknowledging that I have been rambling for quite a bit here. But I felt that it's been important for me to talk about this and to start to feel comfortable with sharing what I'm experiencing, because there might be some people watching this who might be feeling a similar way. And I just want to let you know that if you're feeling a similar way, you're not alone, because yeah, I'm of a similar way. So I'll leave it at that. I may or may not talk a bit more about it, but if people are interested in hearing a bit more about the neurodivergent thing and what I'm at least experiencing in the world, drop a comment, let me know. Otherwise, I'll keep on with the stitching, and I guess we'll wait and see what September brings. And if you've enjoyed what you've seen in this episode, please like, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and I look forward to seeing you all in roughly a couple of weeks' time, or who knows, maybe a week's time. The great thing is I'm on holidays right now, so I've got a bucket load of flexibility to record, edit as much as I practically can, and release a bit more frequently. So wait and see. But until next time, happy stitching, everyone.